Yay! Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Be A Bestseller 5.0, How to Be an Authorpreneur. And the purpose of this series is to help you not just start, not just finish, but publish your book so you can begin your own authorpreneur journey. And today's guest is Stuart Wakefield. With 26 years in theatre, media, and coaching, Stuart brings a wealth of storytelling experience. His journey began with a love for comics and literature, leading to an MA in professional writing. He's authored novels recognised in prestigious contests and is set to debut a TV show next year. As a writer and an Author Accelerator certified book coach, he understands the hurdles new writers face and is dedicated to making budding authors' novel writing journey fulfilling and less daunting, which fits really well with the topic that we're talking today, which is about emotional resilience for writers, something we all need. And so welcome, Stuart. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Emma, and hello to everyone.
Yay, first time visit from Stuart, so I'm really excited about this. But for those who are new to you and want to get to know a little bit more about you, I wonder if you just share about your journey and how you came to be a writer and be a coach.
Yes, absolutely. So I would love to say I was one of the kids who always knew that they wanted to write from the very beginning. Okay. Um, and I wasn't. I was very much a consumer. As you mentioned in my intro, I loved comic books. I grew up watching, Wonder Woman, $6 Million Man, kind of all of those kind of classic 70s, kind of things. And I had never really thought of myself as a creator to be kind of begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got into acting when I was about 5 years old. And possibly because I'm a bit of a show pony and liked to be the center of attention, if I'm honest. So, my sort of career trajectory in parallel with school and work and everything was acting and being in the theatre, but not as a writer. So it was using other people's words and looking at those words and creating meaning out of those and building on other people's work. And I kind of got to my 30s and I'd kind of written like a few sketches. So again, in the UK, we had this amazing comedy writer, Victoria Wood. Was completely obsessed with everything that she did. And I would write like very short kind of sketches, but I was never able to really bring them into a larger kind of form of piece of work. And I would share these sketches, with other directors that I'd been working with. And they thought they were good, but they were never going to have enough material to make a play. And then in 2003, I had a breakdown. I was in rehearsals for a show called Closer, and I'd just come out of a 11-year relationship. It was a very difficult break, and the show, if you know it, is actually around relationships breaking up and people getting back together and then those relationships breaking down. And I ended up for a week in a mental health unit. And when I came out, I could not get back on stage. Mm. And I had counseling, I had, medication, and I didn't do anything creative for 6 years. And by the end of that 6 years, I was climbing the walls. And then I heard, as many writers hear about, is National Novel Writing Month. And I thought to myself, I'd look back over the snippets of things that I'd written. And I thought, you know what? Like, why not just give it a go and see what happens? And I was successful. I met the word count. And from that, I met some fantastic writers who were all different layers of their career. I started a writing group where I lived. And again, we kind of started to make commitments to each other about what we were going to do. And then my first novel, it did really well. It sold about 15,000 copies. I got a lot of, media coverage at the time. And I was like, okay, like, this is doable, and I knew I wouldn't be able to give up my day job, but I thought, okay, like this is going to be my creative outlet.
Mhm.
And I think having worked in the theatre helped, because I understood, about blocking, I understood about attention, I understood about how important it is to have really creative, vibrant characters. And it just tapped into all of the things that I had done. So, I had directed, I had made theatre costume and designed sets. Obviously, I had acted for many years. So I was able to be all of those, the characters, the director, and even got to control the weather. So for me, it was like brilliant, I think, when you're an actor and you audition for parts and you don't get them, that's when you start to build your emotional resilience. But I was going to get every part. I mean, this was perfect. So yeah, I mean that's really how I came into writing. And then from there, I felt the fear and done it anyway.
Mhm.
So last year, I had the opportunity to write for TV. I had never done it before. I didn't know anything about the way that TV worked, and I just said yes. And every time the producers asked me to do something, apart from one thing, which is morally reprehensible, I said yes to everything else. And all of those different types of writing, I've written a 50-word short story that was published. Um, novels, novelettes, short stories, written for TV now. I'm working on my first play. Um, all of those things, all of those experiences and all of those writing types, they translate into each other.
Mhm.
So my writing journey is far from over. I'm working on a screenplay at the moment with BFI. So I am open to any kind of writing. I'm working on a video game. I mean, that's for me, it's all about diversification,
Mhm.
both in length and in the platform.
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of how it brought me to coaching. But yeah, as a writer, that has been my journey. So I would say I would love it for it. I would love, in a way, for it to have been one of those linear stories I always wrote from a kid, but I didn't. I had lots of different experiences, and I didn't come to writing until I was nearly 40.
Ah, that's wonderful to hear. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that is just such great, um, and it's such a great example for other people that you can come to it a little bit later in life. And then I was the
absolutely.
same. I was sort of coming up to my 40th, and that was the kick up the pants I needed to say, are you going to do this? Or are you just
Yes,
going to talk about it for the rest of your life?
absolutely. You don't want to be a one-day novelist,
So yeah,
right?
yeah. So many good things in there. Um, eh, I think you've highlighted too that if you're a creative, you are a creative. And
Mm,
sometimes if one avenue is blocked to you, then you will find another way. So acting was no longer that outlet.
mm,
And so looking for writing, much similar to myself. And I think, that it's important to recognize that because it's so, so good for keeping us sane, keeping us on
yeah,
the right track. I've said it before, some people really need to go for a jog. They need to do that physical exercise. That's what
yeah,
keeps them balanced. But I think for many creatives, it's the act of being creative. That's what keeps us on the straight and narrow.
absolutely.
So really good to sort of highlight that. Your approach to nano as well. I want people to hear that you said to yourself, give it a go.
Yes,
And
yes,
absolutely, I encourage people to, if they're kind of on the fence about whether they want to write or not, just give it a go.
yeah,
The group accountability that you created with your writing
yes.
group, how nice to do that. And not just accountability, I imagine, but community as well.
I think it's incredibly important. And as much as, I wasn't really expecting to talk about my mental health journey quite so much, but, I was away for it. I was basically on suicide watch for a week, and I didn't have any therapy when I was in there. Somebody came to find me every 15 minutes just to make sure I wasn't trying to follow through with the thoughts that I was having. But I think it was on day 3, there was a big group of, so I would get up in the morning, head down, go and get my food, get back to my room as quickly as possible. Because in my head, everyone else was crazy, and I just happened to be there. And I think it was day 3, there was a big group of men on a table. It must have been about 10. And I was walking back out to go back to my room.
By Z, Maren Morris, and Gray now playing.
You're over there.
That's Siri for listening. You. I'm so sorry. Let me just turn it off. How embarrassing. Anyway, yeah. So, and one of them said to me, "Are you going to talk to us or not?" And I was so, if I'm really honest, frightened. I sat down, and those men were the best therapy I ever had.
Oh.
Because I learned from all of them, it was none of them could say no, and we had stretched and stretched and stretched ourselves to the point where we were breaking. And this incredible community, and you find it with writers. You feel like you are the only one who's going through this thing. You feel that you are dredging up all of these emotions for you to write about. You feel that, everyone has a front of stage, right? And we very rarely show what's going on backstage. And I remember I was in a play, and it was the final scene, and I was supposed to go into my sister's bedroom. She'd killed herself, and I was supposed to go into this maudlin. I was supposed to go into her room, say a line, and then that's what would happen. But the lighting went wrong, and I had to go and sit in the steps to her room. So I didn't actually make it to her room, because I thought I need to find the light. So I sat down on the stairs and said my final line, and the play finished. And a woman came to find me and the director, and she said, "That was such a beautiful moment. That was such a beautiful moment." She said, "Oh, I've seen this play before, but the way you did that with him sitting on the stairs in that pool of light," she said, "it was beautiful." And that's what she was thinking. And 5 minutes before, we had been laughing, going, "Oh my God, do you think anyone noticed?" So, what you are seeing front of stage, social media, all of those things, you don't see the writers who are having a bad day, depressed, think that they're worthless. The most significant thing they did that day was actually getting out of bed. So when you start to talk to other writers, everything starts to make sense, and you stop feeling so alone. And I think particularly if you're in a family where they don't really understand what you're doing. My mum, bless her, I remember she said to me one day, "Oh, are you going to your little writing group today?" And she just didn't kind of understand what it was and why I needed that sense of community. And I say this to writers all the time, if you can't find a writing group, start one.
And so this kind of helped you. You certainly, your life as an actor and the casting system absolutely helps you build resilience, and that will have fed really nicely into, or not nicely, but fed really helpfully into the writing world as well, because you do need resilience for that. And I think you're right to highlight that it's emotional resilience as well as the sort of tenacity side of, just keep sending those letters out. But actually, it does take an emotional toll on us. And eventually we can maybe be thinking, do you know what? I am just not good enough for this. And that, I imagine, if that thought becomes strong enough and becomes a belief, a lot of writers will give up. And I wonder if you can kind of talk into that feeling about what it perhaps you've experienced either with yourself or other writers of feeling that they're not good enough.
I think that is, I think the first thing is recognizing that is what is going on, and actually being able to take a step back and recognizing what that negative self-talk is, and saying, okay, is there actually any truth in this?
Mm-hmm.
So, somebody, you're telling yourself, like, you're a terrible writer, you can't write good characters, you can't do this, you can't do that. I think the thing is that you've recognized there is something there that you need to work on. Okay. So, and I know, like, if I was to ask any of your writers to write a bad review about their work in progress, chances are you're going to pick up on what you know is actually already wrong with your book, right? And it's this weird psychological trick. But if you can recognize this negative self-talk as, okay, is there any evidence to this? Okay, so what is my evidence that I can't write a good character? And it may well be that you haven't really connected with that person yet. You don't really understand who that person is yet that you're writing about. So rather than kind of beat yourself up about it, it is that thing of, okay, this voice is telling me something, and that either there is or there isn't evidence to support it. If there is evidence, then you know what it is that you need to go and work on. If there isn't any evidence, that's the point where you need to start challenging the way that you're thinking. Okay. And celebrate kind of like some of the smaller wins. Looking for feedback from somebody who knows what it is that they're talking about. Okay. So, and I wouldn't necessarily always say that's a fellow writer. I think if you are going to look for feedback from somebody, you need to observe them giving feedback to somebody else to really understand it, or at least understand that they've been trained to give feedback, because there is an art to it. And I've had a few writers come to me as a book coach who are like the walking wounded, and they haven't written for 2 or 3 years because they had a terrible edit from somebody. I had an editor really go for me once because I described a painting of somebody as a painting, and I got like 3 paragraphs is why it should be a portrait. I should have used the word portrait. And it was so nasty. But I had developed by this point a thick enough skin to be like, all right, like a simple comment like, did you mean to use the word portrait here? Would have been fine. Yeah. I don't need 3 paragraphs in how can you have gone to art school for a year and then write the word painting instead of portrait? That is not constructive, kind, compassionate feedback. And I think all writers want that. I had a writer come to me, very high-powered marketing job in the US, and she's like, give it to me both barrels, like, I can take it. And I'm like, well, that's not really how I work. And she was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'll try, but hand on heart, I couldn't do it. And then when I turned the feedback into her, she came back to me and she said, oh, thank God you didn't go for me, because I don't think I actually could have taken it. She said it was so stressful waiting for the feedback and then getting your feedback. And, I thought she had some fundamental work to do on her manuscript. I don't think delivering that message with both barrels would have really done her any good.
No. So, and I think this is a really great point, actually, to, that you're making here, and a great example with your clients, because a lot of people I hear from, they're very successful in their corporate life, in their paid job, in the day-to-day life. And are very high achievers. I've got one client right now who is very much that, and now she's writing a novel, and I don't think she's alone when she said to me, this is the most terrifying thing I've done. Yes. There's that big switch between doing something that you feel that you've been trained for, or that you've had enough life experience with, job experience with, and now you're coming into a creative field where effectively, and I think especially in those maybe first 2, maybe 3 books, there's an autobiographical element to the books. Yes. And so that feels like you're putting your heart on the page there. And so that feeling of rejection can come up, and a fear around that. And I think even though your client sounds like, yeah, I am, an A-type, actually we all feel that kind of fear of rejection. And it doesn't matter what you do in your day.
Yeah.
You're still a creative being.
All creativity is deeply personal work. Okay. So whether as an actor, you are interpreting a plot and the words on a page, you are bringing something to that. So, you will be aware of Konstantin Stanislavski. So that was all around teaching actors to bring their emotional background, their own emotional background, into the characters that they were playing. So dipping back into your own experience. And, whether you are a sculptor, a painter or writer, you are dredging stuff up from inside yourself. And I would sort of argue that if you're not, then you are likely to be maybe writing for the market as opposed to writing kind of personal work. And I think that's the kind of work that you can burn out of. And I think if you understand what it is you're trying to write and what it is you're trying to say and why you are the best person to do that, you've tapped into what I call the rocket fuel. Because writing, especially if you're writing an 80,000 word novel, that's a marathon. And there are going to be times when you sit there and think, I mean, you probably did it as an actor, as I probably did, you're a week or so into rehearsals and you're thinking, like, why am I here? Why did I, I needed the money, but why did I take this part? Right? And, my life would have been so much easier if I, worked at Quick Fit. But you need that energy, you need that fuel cell to tap into to keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you bring something to it. And I think that is why you become more vulnerable to criticism, rejection. It's one thing your boss telling you that your project plan isn't working. It's another thing to say that something you've been deeply invested in, likely for years, that comes from you are creating something from nothing,
Mm-hmm.
is worthless or not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a very different message to be hearing against your kind of day-to-day job that you're probably not that invested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that strength, that emotional resilience that you're talking about, when we are connected to the story and why we are the only person to tell that story, we're able to tap into that and dig into that. That's where it doesn't matter what somebody else says. If we feel it's coming from a true place, and there's craft and there's there's the guidelines that we learn as we're writing a long piece, but ultimately it is subjective. And if we feel that it's coming from a true and honest place and we're connected to that character and to what's happening and we're bringing a truth to it,
absolutely,
then I think maybe the resilience can come from that.
Yes, because you have that belief. You have that belief and that investment and that courage and knowledge that you are doing the right thing by writing this piece of work. Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. You're doing the right thing. Let me write that down. And so we want to know that we're doing the right thing. And I know that you sort of talk about the emotional you. And I wonder if you could talk into that a little bit and share with us your sort of thoughts about that and how that works for you.
I think any self-talk that is telling you that you are not good enough is emotional you. Okay. And I also think that as writers, because we tend to be emotional people, right? And that means we feel everything more intensely. And that has fantastic sides to it, because we feel incredible joy and fun and all of those things. But we also feel this incredible sense of sometimes grief and loss. And, you know, we can beat ourselves up. And I might get emotional while I'm telling you this, okay? But my counselor said to me, I want you to get a picture of yourself as a child and frame it and put it on your desk. And I was like, why? That's just weird. And she said, like, try it. Wow. I found this photo and I looked at it and I wept because I thought, why am I saying to these, like, that little boy is me? Like, why would I say all of those awful things, disgusting things to myself? Would I say that to him? And I'm like, well, no, because he is how I used to be before life got to me, right? So, but he's the creative, happy little boy. And that's who you all are as writers. You are your creative child. Okay, because that's how we learn. That's how we do it. So why would you say those disgusting, awful things to your 7-year-old self? So I think as long as you start to realize that, okay, these emotions are making me feel bad, and that's when you can step back and kind of start to examine them. And again, you're looking at that kind of, is there evidence to support this? You know, or is this just this awful self-critical voice? You need to be self-critical to a degree. Okay, so let's talk about Donald Trump. Yeah, okay. But, you know, like him or hate him, he has absolutely zero imposter syndrome. Okay, like weakness is not even in his vocabulary. Okay, and feeling not good enough is the cry of every human soul. Okay, if you didn't think you weren't good enough, you'd be in a lab somewhere and somebody would be looking at your brain, because we all feel like that all of the time. But I do think as writers and creatives, we feel that more deeply. So, and I think it's being able to recognize this voice and not seeing it as a metal wall, but reducing it down into like a white picket fence or something even lower, that you can just kind of see it and recognize it and then step over it and say, okay, this voice is here for a reason, but it's not here to decimate my confidence. It's here to give me gentle guidance. And I think then, you know, I could quote you my negative reviews word for word. My good ones I probably couldn't, because those stick to you. They're like Velcro. And I think if somebody says something nice to you about your writing, you know, write it down, put it somewhere, put it in a notes app on your phone, write it on a piece of paper, put it in a jar. And when you start to feel those emotions coming through, then get the text out, you know, empty the jar, go through those pieces of paper, because, you know, I think we often seek confirmatory evidence as well. You know, we look for all of that evidence that tells us that we're not good enough. And what we don't do is we don't stop and we don't look up and we don't look back. Okay, my first novel did really, really well. It's awful. It's awful.
I'm sure it's not at all.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, I look at what I write now compared to that. Okay, and you know, I think it's awful, but I think also we have to accept that. You know, there's that wonderful video of Ryan Gosling dancing as a child to, I don't know, I think it's it doesn't matter whose song it is, but Kathy Dennis.
That's it.
And yeah, Kathy Dennis and CNC Music Factory. And I mean, he cringes looking back at that. Okay, but again, it's like, okay, like I look back and yeah, that book is, I think, awful, but how much have I learned since then? How much further have I come? And I think even if you are writing your first book, nobody needs to see it. Okay. You might have a couple of novels, practice novels under your belt before you decide that you're going to, seek to publish one. And it is important to just look back and see how far you've come. And also, if you're beating yourself up in isolation, I mean, your book, who are these people who are saying you're not good enough? Who else is saying it? Okay, chances are nobody else, right? So, like, why do we do it to ourselves? We're so disgusting to ourselves, and none of that. I bet you there is none of that evidence to support it. Okay, no, you'll find 1-star reviews of books that you love, and you'll find 5-star reviews of books that you hate. What I will say is there's always somebody who will read what you've written. People are weird, right? I mean, we had a brief chat before we started recording. You were talking about dinosaur erotica, and I was talking about Kissing the Coronavirus novel. I mean, and people bought it. Like, I don't think many people will tell you that 50 Shades of Grey is a great literary masterpiece. It's not. People bought it and wrote it, watch the movies and stuff. I mean, it kind of took off, but it speaks to people at a certain level. So there is always somebody who will read what you write and enjoy it.
Yeah. I really love your emphasis throughout this on looking for evidence, and how, because I love the idea of writing down the positive things that people say, keeping a note of them, because you're right, we do forget that. And I have a little inbox, a little folder in my inbox where I call them love letters. So when somebody has said something nice, I keep it, because there are people who say not so many nice things, and so it's great to go back to those love letters and be, okay, so I am helping somebody somewhere, and they're getting benefit from it. And it's the same with our stories, to know that, okay, someone's really enjoying what we're writing. Someone's really connecting either with the storyline or with the characters. And if we give ourselves the evidence that exists, we can come back to it and reinforce it by looking at them. But I love to, as well, that you're talking about looking for evidence about who is saying all these things about your writing and how awful it is. And I agree with you. I think probably not really anybody else, just ourselves, that we're the only ones saying this. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on, why do we say these things to ourselves? Why do we berate ourselves so much, do you think?
Wow. Comparisonitis. Yeah. So, if you're going to compare yourself to somebody else, you might as well just buy a cactus and sit on it, or go outside and lick a toad. Those are all horrible things that you could do. And again, I mean, especially with social media, like, everything is set up. We value people who are freakishly successful. Okay. And there was an art movement, I can't remember what it was called. There was an art movement, and it would be like paintings of people sweeping floors. And it came to celebrate kind of the ordinary, and I've met some amazing cleaners at work who are nicer than the managing directors, and those people are providing a fundamental service, right? But we all revere the CEO. Okay. And now, like I was saying before about front of stage, back of stage, we are programmed to be perfect and be special. Okay. And there are lots of writers that we don't see, like we like hook into movie stars, or we hook into directors. There aren't that many. I bet you could probably name more famous directors than you probably could writers, in terms of like movie writers. Okay. I think it's different with books, but the great unwashed, fewer of us, like, if I'm honest, most of us are going to wait for the movie right? If we're not even going to wait for the movie, we're going to go and play a video game. But, you know, there's some incredible writing in those areas as well that people don't think about. So there's lots of jobbing writers who are making incredible films or writing incredible films that you probably don't even know the name of. Okay. Those people aren't necessarily special. They might be special within their industry, but in terms of the public consciousness, they're not special. Okay. Yet everything is built up to be, you have to be special, you have to be the bestseller, you have to be this, you have to be that. And I think if you adjust your expectations, if you say to yourself, okay, I'm probably not going to sell, you know, 1 million copies of this book or that book. You know, I'm probably not going to write 15,000 words today. You know, I might be lucky if I write 500. I think celebrating those smaller wins, like I was saying, some days just getting out of bed is a win, right? Say you only wrote 1 sentence a day, okay? Now, sentences are what? 15 to 20 words long. So 80,000 word novel, you're looking at about just coming up for 11 years, right? So if you wrote 1 sentence a day, you could write a novel in 11 years, right? Now that's a long time, but you could do it. If you really wanted to write a novel, even if it's just one in your whole lifetime, you could do one in 11 years if you wrote 1 sentence a day. So again, I think it's you know, you can't compare yourself to this one and that one if you're not in the same life, or even if you do have the same life. You know, well, say you've got 6 hours of focus 6 hours of focus time a day, okay, compared to somebody, I don't know, a new mum who works full time. You know, she might have 15 minutes focus time a day. You're all at different levels of experience. And again, like I'll say it over and over again, I've probably lost complete track of what it was that you asked me, but it's about being kind to yourself and understanding and setting your expectations. And I think that was it. It was about why we're so disgusting to ourselves. But also media, by celebrating people who are freakishly successful, the flip side of that is they are by stealth telling you that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And again, this is like this whole debut novelist thing that we have going on. Oh, you know, debut author. They might have written loads of really terrible novels, but this is the first one they put out to an agent. This isn't some freakish wonder child who wrote a novel in 3 months and then you know, started trying to get an agent for it and then got a publishing deal. You know, those stories are made to be a story that goes along with the book. It's all marketing. Okay. So basically we're programmed. I think we kind of programmed to hate ourselves, particularly in the UK.
Well, possibly, yeah, it is possible that is, and what we see kind of mirrored in the world, then it reinforces that. And that word comparisonitis, of course, is just so prevalent everywhere. And I think it's like the word anxiety as well. If we see it around often enough, we kind of buy into it and we start telling ourselves, oh, we're not good enough, or we're, you know, too anxious about things. We have covered a lot of great stuff today, Stuart, and I want to say thank you very much for bringing such a lovely perspective to this, and a really empathetic perspective I think a lot of people will resonate with. I really, really do. And to help people along with that, you've got a lovely free gift for them, an ebook, Emotional Resilience for Writers. And I wonder if you could just tell us just a snippet about what people might be able to expect.
Yeah, so it's not horribly long, but you know, it's just kind of like the right amount of length for you to kind of dip in and out of and just get a bit of reassurance, you know, that you're not alone in this. You know, and it talks about rejection, it talks about you know, imposter syndrome, it talks about, you know, dealing with kind of emotional you. Okay, and there are some exercises in there for you to have a think about, some activities that you can do to try and help you get yourself out of this mindset But more importantly, it's not just getting away from that mindset, it's getting to a place where you feel confident and happy, and you're able to maintain the pace, a self-set pace, be able to, you know, achieve the work that you want to do, both your writing work, and then when you start to go out into pitching, if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I'm sure people are going to grab that. Thank you, Stuart. That was wonderful.
You're very welcome. So lovely to talk to you.